So I'll repeat. What I was saying was, let me post the slides as well. Aryan Ankur, can you stop the hand raises, please? Abhi ke liye. Next.js backend. Just 1 second. Trying to find the slides. Aryan, can you find the slides for today? It's titled Next.js backend. I can't find it. All right. I'll open chat just for 5 minutes. If you have front-end projects, at least 4 of them that are good, even 2 of them that are really good, and you're confident in front-end, then please post them. She's not turned on. Did I make Aryan host or what? There we go. Sharing my screen, other people can look as well. I'm opening chat. I'll spend like 5-10 minutes on this, then we'll start Next.js backend. Anyone with Notion Docs projects, there we go. Few of them, all right. Again, this is only for people who are okay with moving Noida on site. This one's Man something. Manas. Yeah, I think that you should be fine, Manas. So let's. Oopsie daisy. Unless these are like some tutorials that you've copied. So Manas should be fine. How will I reach you, Manas? अपने Twitter भी डाल देना so that I can talk to you. नहीं तो if I forget, just DM 100x devs on Twitter and we'll get you from there. Another guy. This also looks. I mean, this is probably a copy, but yes, all right. Few folks. Baki, if I miss someone, just send your Notion docs with all the projects to 100x devs Twitter, and I'll look at them from there. Maybe put some proof of work. Honestly, put how much front end you know, how much you don't know, and we can go from there. If you can't move to Noida, unfortunately, this was not for you. This one's pretty good. Whoever built this, as long as you built it yourself, should be fine. At least looks fine. I mean, I don't know. I'll interview you first. So you should be fine, whoever this was. Chat room and 100x devs app. Not great. Clone projects with decent only. Flow. What have you written? You can't move to Noida, but I'm in college. Might not happen then, unfortunately. If you're in college, that's fine. They've hired one person who's in college, but his college is pretty chill. Uska last exam ho gaya tha, and then his last semester is pretty chill. This one also looks decent only. Let's see. So I've named 3-4 people right now. Manas was one, and then a few other people. So feel free to just message her. Yeah, this is pretty bad, honestly. For this opportunity, like this is good, but like not good for a front-end dev, right? Front-end, the only thing they expect is no live link, polishes. This is like okay, not good, not bad. Very templatey. This looks like the same template for some reason, unless I open the same project. Please don't be black and purple. This one. Yeah. Looks like a lot of externity or shared CN components put together, but still decentish. Like can be spun around. Ki, haan, this is good. You guys should build like projects outside the cohort as well. Like not just this is pretty. Like I'm not a UI guy, but I can still tell there should be some margin here. Things like these. Font is really bad, so on and so forth. So okay, long story short, I found a few people. This guy probably was the best amongst the current submissions, if they have not copied it. Let's see if the projects have been class slides. Next.js backend creating a full app. I don't know if that is the one. Next.js backend. There we go. Server size Next.js. Found it. These are the slides for today. To recap, a few people I found initially, even if you weren't able to post, just 100x Twitter, I think is open. And if it is not, just let me know on, Discord or something. It's not recording. No, it is recording. And I think that's pretty much it. That's all I had. Initial discussions. To recap, Noida company, 10 to 18 LPA, looking for a front-end dev. If you know back-end, that is good. If not, that is fine as well. They just need someone very polished. Basically, if you're half level as Keshav, you should be fine. If you're at the level of Keshav, you probably don't even need an interview. So if you feel confident, let me know. 100x Twitter. Page just message and I'll take the projects from there. I have access to it. Cool. Let's get into backend in Next.js. Let me recap what we did last week. Also, tomorrow there might not be a class, so today might be a longer class because tomorrow I have to take something important to do tomorrow. You guys will know what. Will have to be there. So last week we discussed Next.js. There was one class we have taken on it. In this class, we did specifically client-side Next.js. Even though client-side is a very weird term that you should not use with Next.js. But mota we understood how to create front ends. We understood how can you, if you remember, we initialized a new Next.js application. We understood a little bit about server-side rendering.
Recording in progress.
Server-side rendering. We understood a little bit about how React is not good for SEO and Next.js is good / great for SEO. We understood why Next.js is good. We created a simple project. We saw server-side rendering happening over there. We did a very initial discussion on client components versus server components. This is what we did last week. This week is going to be, if you remember from last week, I told you in Next.js you can build backends and frontends. That means you don't really need Express. So should you do this? The answer is yes. If you look at all of our repositories, if you look at cal.com, if you look at dub.sh, if you look at a Next.js project, if you look at a lot of YC companies also, the people, Abhi Akash was referred somewhere, pure Next.js, repository, which means backend is in Next.js, frontend is in Next.js. There are a lot of good reasons for you to have everything in the same repositories. We'll talk about some of those reasons. But long story short, Next.js is a framework that is built on top of React. It lets you write frontend. It also lets you write backend. Why would you want to write frontend in Next.js? A few reasons. Biggest one being, it is good for SEO, search engine optimization. It makes your pages a little bit faster. It caches pages from time to time. You can distribute it via a CDN also, and some things you can't distribute via CDN. If you did not understand this last statement, that is fine. But most good projects you look at, unless there is a reason to use React, which sometimes there are reasons to use React, but most of the times it will be in Next.js. What are reasons to use React? If you remember from last week, it is cheaper to distribute. You don't need a server somewhere. It can be distributed via CDNs. Next.js, some parts can be distributed via CDNs, some parts cannot. That is why, if you remember, I told one thing last week. Okay, most companies have their landing pages in either Next.js or pure HTML, CSS, JS. And they have their actual product in React, actual dashboard in React. So neon.tech/dashboard would be in React. But Neon का जो landing page है, neon.tech, that would be in Next or raw HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So if you go to neon.tech, if you go to console.neon.tech, this can be in React. Why? Because this doesn't need to be SEO optimized. Google is not able to log into Neon and get into this page and understand what it is doing. But the landing page, neon.tech, this needs to be really fast when it comes to the client. It needs to have some level of SEO, search engine optimization. So Google can understand that Neon is used for Postgres databases, which is why landing pages, Next.js, the real dashboard jahan aapka actual stuff hai, that can be in React as well, but landing pages should be in Next.js. Generally, everything is in Next.js. Last week we did frontend. Next.js can be used to create backend as well. Next.js is a full stack framework. Even though it feels like it should be used only for frontend, and it feels very weird, how can you have frontend and backend in the same code base using the same framework? It lets you do it, and you should use it as well. A good example of this is, if you go to app.100xsteps.com, you will see HTML being returned from the backend. If I go to app.100xsteps.com, even if I go to the landing page, the first request that goes out, whatever is this first request, this request returned me some HTML. So that means the Next.js server can respond back with some HTML, but it can also respond back with some JSON. If you go to app.100xsteps.com/API/user, I think we stopped this because of one random reason. Seems like the config's broken here. Aryan, remind me. Probably log me out. See. and log me out. Let's go to a different one. API auth session. This app.100xsteps.com points to a Next.js server. If you go to the landing page, returns you HTML. If you go to /API/auth/session, it returns you this. I have exposed my JWT to everyone, so feel free to log in to my account. Actually, don't do that because this is an admin account, which means I should log out so that you guys can't log in. All right, that JWT is revoked now. तो Next.js you can write front end and back end both. Here is a good example of this. ये इसने HTML लौटाया, इसने JavaScript JSON लौटाया, and this JSON, if you've seen it in the past, usually gets returned by backend servers, usually gets returned by Express servers. So nice framework that lets you do this. What is the benefit of this? A single code base for all your code, front end back end same जगह पे है. No CORS issues. Single domain for your front end and back end. This is an underrated benefit of using Next.js कि आपको CORS नहीं लगाना पड़ता. Until now, we have used CORS in a very insecure way. हम लोग क्या करते हैं? If this is our Express code base, we simply write app.use CORS. This is actually not good. You should restrict CORS to certain domains. क्या the CORS should be allowed only from app.100xsteps.com. We allow CORS from everywhere. We allow cross-origin requests from everywhere. That is highly insecure. So, you can avoid all of this knowledge. I have to, when does CORS work? What domains should I restrict my CORS to? If you are using Next.js. Next.js mein, the front end and the back end are hosted on the same endpoint. So there is no cross-origin sharing. The origin is the same. Whenever the front end is hitting the back end, it is hitting it on the same origin. It is not hitting it on api.100xsteps.com. Not on a different origin, the same origin, which is why यहाँ से अगर यहाँ request गई, if in this code base I write axios.get, I don't need to have CORS enabled over here. I don't need to write app.use CORS because origin is the same. Front end and back end ka URL is the same. So just an added benefit that you get if you're using Next.js for backend. And lastly, ease of deployment. Deploy to a single code base. ये और ये तो same ही लग रहा है वैसे मुझे. Oh, deploying the single code base. Yes. If you remember, I don't think we've discussed this. We'll discuss this in DevOps. But if you have a React project and then you have a Node.js backend, the way you deploy them on the internet is that you send the React code base to something like S3 or an object store. ये हमने discuss नहीं किया है, so don't worry if you don't understand this. But my point is you have to have two different deployment pipelines. Whenever your React code changes, you have to redeploy the new React code to some place which is called an object store. Why is it called an object store? We will get to when we reach DevOps. And Node.js, you deploy it on a virtual machine. You deploy it on something like EC2, if you have heard of it. Whenever there is a change in the Node.js code, you deploy it over there. So you have two different deployment pipelines. But if you have your front end and back end in the same code base, if you are using Next.js, then this will be your single Next.js code base. Whenever there is a code change that happens over here, the deployment happens to the same virtual machine. You don't have to deploy front end separately and back end separately. That is another benefit of using backend in Next.js. You are not forced to use backend in Next.js. Last week, we did not write any backend in Next.js, but it's a good idea to have front end and backend in the same code base. Before we get there, first of all, let's do a small poll and see how many of you already understand this. ये तो पूरा आता ही हकीकत. Do you already understand all of this? Maybe server actions को छोड़ के. Do you already understand everything that is written over here? Yes or no? Do you already know everything we're covering? Yes or no? Okay, mostly no. Like not a lot of no. 65% no, 37% is yes. Cool. ठीक है भाई. So I'll keep it थोड़ा सा fast, not too fast. Recapping the data fetching in React. We've done many projects now, and common way for a front end to interact with the backend is this. Today we are not building a backend, but there is a endpoint that I've hosted. Week 3 offline.keratechnologies.workers.dev/API/v1/user/details. It's an openly available backend endpoint. It has CORS enabled. So how would our front end interact with the backend? Let's see. If I open this React application, how is this React application hitting the backend? Let me right click, inspect, click on the network tab, expand this a little bit and refresh. The first request goes to week 14-2.vercel.app. It gets back the HTML. HTML क्या है? HTML एकदम खाली है. The HTML has nothing. It just has a div, empty div which has root written in it. Then there is a script tag over here, /assets/index-something.js. Then we get this JavaScript bundle. We run the JavaScript bundle. Then we hit week 13 offline.keratechnologies.com. We hit the backend after some time. What was this called from last week? This is called waterfalling. Hitting the backend, getting the HTML. Hitting the backend, getting the JavaScript. Hitting the real backend and getting back the JSON. And then showing it over here. This is called waterfalling. This is how front ends interact with the backend. ये तो simple है. In our React code base, somewhere we have written, what would our React component look like? It would be something like this. Function app. Actually, it's written already here. So let me just show you. This is what our user card component would look like. Let's say this thing that is rendered over here is a user card component. Better mic. In the user card component, what do? We first have a few state variables. User data and loading. Those state variables define kiye. Then we have an effect that runs on mount. Whenever the user card component mounts, we hit the keratechnologies.workers.dev endpoint. We get back the response. We set loading to false. We set user data to whatever the backend returned us. We update these state variables. Uske baad, the code is written over here. If loading, then return a spinner. Show loading on the screen. If it is not loading, then return the actual card. This is the standard way to do data fetching in React. There are better ways. If you have heard of React query, that will make your life a little bit easier in doing this. It's cleaner syntax. But let's say you can't use any external library. Then this is how you would write the user card component. So that whenever the user comes, they initially see loading. Did you see the loader over here for just 1 millisecond? They initially see a loader. And then when the backend request responds back, when the backend request responds back or finishes, we set loader to false. This becomes false. And hence the spinner does not render anymore. The actual content renders. Ye samajh aata hai? This is simple enough. This is how the data fetching is happening. I am hitting this front end, week14.vercel.app. I'm getting back some HTML. I'm getting back the JavaScript. Both of these are coming from wherever the React is hosted. Assume it is hosted somewhere on some CDN. Now, what is a CDN? We'll come to. Isko black box le lo. Take this as a black box. React is hosted separately. Backend is hosted separately. These I'm getting from the front end. This I'm getting from the backend server. And then I'm finally rendering it. ये flow सबको समझ आता है? Is this clear already? We already know how data fetching happens in React and why this is bad. This is bad because too many requests are going out. Waterfalling is happening. It is not SEO optimized. When I go over here, click on right click, look at the first request. The first request has literally nothing in here. The HTML does not say that this is Harkirat or harkirat@gmail.com. So no Google engine, Google bot, SEO crawlers can figure out. SEO crawlers क्या होते हैं? Search engine optimization crawlers. Google is running infinite number of crawlers every day that crawl every website and figure out that this website is doing this. This website is doing this. When it crawls my website, it sees nothing. It's like, I don't know what this website does. Because initial HTML has nothing. Eventually JavaScript kicks in and eventually we hit the backend. And then data comes over here. Google ka bot doesn't do this much. Google ka crawler will only hit this, figure out कि ये तो खाली website है. Some title is written, it will ignore it. That is the bad reason for you to use React. This is why React is not SEO optimized. Let's do a quick poll. Do we understand this? 92% is great. Let's move on to the next slide. Let me also charge my laptop in the meanwhile. Cool. We also saw last week, okay, Next.js, may this becomes very nice. Next.js, may the data fetching looks like this. When I go to the landing page, I ask the backend give me the user's details. I ask the Next.js server कि भाई, I am hitting the landing page. Can you give me the user card? So the Next.js server talks to the backend server. The Next.js server sends a request here, gets the user ka JSON, fills it over here, and returns it to the front end. The front end comes pre-rendered from the server. Last week ये चीज करी थी. Let's see if we have an example here. We don't have an example here, but let's quickly write it. It will also warm us up, and we have to create a Next.js project anyways. So let's start by writing our first Next.js project for today. This we don't have to write, we already understand. This let's write. Let's convert this simple React project into a Next.js project. You should fetch data. Okay. Let's start that. Okay. Let's start creating a simple Next.js project. Let me open a terminal. You क्या है भाई? All right. Let me go to cd projects/cohort3 and let me run npx create next app at the rate of latest. This is what we ran last week as well. This is very similar to Vite at the rate of latest. That lets you create React project. This lets you bootstrap a Next.js project. So if you're trying it locally, feel free to run the same steps. They are present in the slides as well. I'm going to call it, I think we're at week 19. We do want to use TypeScript over here. We do want to use ESLint. Harkirat, what is ESLint? We will come to very soon in like a few weeks. We want to use Tailwind over here for styling. So yes, doesn't matter either way. Let's not create a source directory. This will just put our source code in a source directory. We can keep it outside also. Either is fine. Do you want to use the app router? Harkirat, what is the app router? We discussed last week. Pehle, there was no such thing as an app router. There was something else called the pages router. That's the old way to do Next.js. Now this is the new way to do Next.js. Most projects either use the app router or are migrating to the app router. So just select the app router over here. Do you want to use TurboPack? Yes or no, either is fine. This is how you can build your Next.js project. This is being built by, I think, the folks at Vercel only or some other team. So you can use this as the bundler or you can use, the default one. Do you want import aliases? Yes, no, either is fine. Import aliases kya hote hain ki, if you want to import from one file to another, do you want to import it as @/components/user card, or do you want to import it as //components/user-card.tsx? Either is fine. Let's select the default value, no. Let's open this in Visual Studio Code. Cool. The folder structure we have discussed last week. Let me do a 1 minute recap of what the folder structure looks like in Next.js. But if I run npm run dev right now, if I start this Next.js project and go to localhost :3000, I see a page that looks like this. The page is clearly telling me can get started by editing app/page.tsx. So let's go to app/page.tsx. And if you look at it, it has some tailwind, very long tailwind written over here. But if I compare the thing on the left with the thing on the right, there is some text here, get started by editing. There is some text here, get started by editing. So hopefully, most probably, this component is what is rendering on the landing page. When I go to the landing page, this thing renders. How can I confirm? Let me delete everything. Let me write a div that says hi there. Let me save it, and I see hi there over there. So ठीक है, makes sense. Whatever is written inside this component renders on the landing page. How does that render on the landing page? Because of file-based routing. What does Next.js have? We discussed last week. File-based routing. You look at page.tsx, app/page.tsx में whatever is being exported gets rendered on the slash endpoint. If I create a new folder here called user, and inside user I create another page.tsx, and यहाँ पे if I export default function user, which returns something like this, user page, what have I done? I created app/user/page.tsx. इसका मतलब है कि यार /user पे this page should render. So this is file based routing. What are we doing? Routing /pay something should render, /user पे something else should render. Similarly, let's say /signin. I created signin/page.tsx. यहाँ पे let me export default function signin. Signin page. Signin page में क्या होगा? There will be an input box. Email. There will be another input box for password. And there will be a button. That is what a sign in page looks like. And if I go to sign in over here, I see sign in page written, this text right here. I see the first input box, the second input box, and the sign in button. So that is how routing happens in Next.js. Sign in page पे कुछ render हुआ, user page पे कुछ render हुआ, page पे कुछ render हुआ. You can add more and more nesting. /auth/sign in करना है तो create a folder called auth. Move the sign in page over there. So now I have app/auth/signin/page.tsx, which would render on /auth/signin. ये हमने last week किया था already. So if you don't understand this, you should go back to the last week's videos. The question is, how did we do data fetching last week? This user component that I have, user page that I have, how should I do data fetching? Should I do this? Const loading comma set loading equal to use state false. Const data comma set data equal to use state, let's say an empty object. Add a use effect over here that runs on mount. That does, either a fetch or an axios.get. Let me install axios, npm install axios. You don't have to, you can follow this, but you don't have to write this. This is the bad way to write Next.js data fetching. This is the bad way to do Next.js data fetching. Use effect, axios.get. What was the URL? The URL for the backend was this. Let me paste it in chat in case, or you can find it in the slides as well. But let me quickly paste it in chat so that if you're following along, feel free to try it on your side. Imported axios at the top, did an axios.get, dot then response, set data, response.data. ये code समझ आ रहा है? Is this code hard to read, easy to read? It's the same as the React code. There is nothing different over there. This is how we did data fetching in React. This is how we are doing data fetching in Next.js. If our backend is separate, if we write backend code here, that will be something else. But abhi ke liye it looks like this. And यहाँ पे what can I do? If loading is true, then return a loader, something like this. Else, return user page and render whatever user dot, data dot name. What does the backend return? It returns a name and an email, a bunch of other things, but let's just worry about name and email. Data.name, data.email. It will give you type errors because it does not know the type of data, or it actually, forces the type of data to be this. So let's make it empty initially. Then also, it will give you some error. Okay, data will be undefined. So feel free to ignore this in dev mode as well, or you can add optional chaining over here. Still, you have to give it a type. there are ways to fix this. You can add a generic over here, but let's not go there. There is a red squiggly over here. Ignore the red squiggly for now. ठीक है. I've been able to render data.name and data.email. Let's look at the front end and see, does this work? एक चीज जो मैं करना भूल गया कि loading should initially be true. Loading should initially be true, and when the data comes back, then loading should become false. Initially, the person should see loading on the screen. If loading is true, user will see this. After we hit the backend, get back the data, we set the data variable over here, and then we set loading to be false. Then we want this card component to render, so that we see loading initially, and when the loading is done, then we see this. Let's see it in action. Let's see, does it work? Again, this is the component. Feel free to read through it. Maybe breeze through it for 30 seconds. If you're writing it on your side, feel free to write it as well. I'll recap what it does. Even though it does the same thing we saw a while back in the last slide. Only we are doing it in NextJS, not in React. Define a loading state variable. Define a data state variable. Inside a use effect, do a axios.get, hit the backend endpoint, get the response, set data, this state variable, to be whatever the backend returned. Set loading, this state variable, to be false now. If my data aa gaya, loading is false. What will that do? Initially loading will be true, so you will see this on the screen. After the backend responds back, could be after 1 second, could be after 10 seconds, depends on how slow the backend is. But whenever that happens, then this will start to render because loading will become false. So this statement will become false, and we can render this on the screen. It will be ugly. We have not prettified it, but it works. Let's see. If I go to localhost 3000/user, what will happen? A small error will come. To get rid of that error, add use client at the top of your file. Whenever you use state or use effect or a few other things, then you have to do this. You have to convert your page or your component to be a client component. What are client components? We will come to. What are server components? We will come to. They are very important topic to discuss. बट अगर आप कभी भी यूज स्टेट यूज कर रहे हो या यूज इफेक्ट यूज कर रहे हो या दो चार चीजें और होती हैं वो यूज कर रहे हो, then you have to convert your component to a client component. If you don't put anything like this over here, by default it is a server component. Server components cannot use state, cannot use effect. Server components cannot have any side effects. So if you do just this and try to go to /user after starting your NextJS process, you'll see an error. You're importing a component that needs use effect. React hooks only works in a client component. To fix this, mark the file with use client. So it is clearly telling you how to fix it. It is saying mark the file with use client. At the top of your file, add use client, and then you're good to go. Do we see loading initially and then this? Yes, sir, Kirat. So have we sort of created what we are seeing over here? Of course, this is a little pretty, the React application. But mota a loader followed by a card. And the same thing over here, loading followed by the data. We can put it in the center of the screen. That is simple CSS, easy to do. Question is this the right way to do data fetching in NextJS? Does it get rid of the problems of React? NextJS can get rid of the problems of React if the developer is doing things the right way. यहाँ पे developer is not doing things the right way. This is not the right way to fetch data from the backend in NextJS. Why? Because ये जो request है, ये जो use effect है, it will run on your client. It will run inside the browser. What were we hoping for? We were hoping for this. Okay, we hit the backend, the NextJS server. There is something I'm running over here on port 3000. When I do npm run dev, on my machine I'm running a server on localhost 3000. That server is this yellow thing, and the API endpoint, ये वाला week 3 offline.kirartechnologies.workers.dev, that is this backend server in green. React में क्या हो रहा था? बहुत सारी waterfalling, and then the client was hitting the backend server directly. What did we say NextJS will do? Okay, you will hit NextJS. NextJS server will hit the backend server. This yellow server should hit the green server, get back the response and return it to the browser. Is that happening right now? Let's see. If I go over here in the /user page, right click, inspect, click on the network tab and refresh. Where is the request going to Kirat Technologies.api.dev? वो भी जो endpoint था. It is going on the front end. It is going from the browser. If it was going from the server, so this browser would have never interacted with the backend. I would have never seen this. But since I'm seeing this, that means the front end is sending the request. This use effect is not running on the server. It is running on the client, as it should. Use effects are supposed to run on the client. We have made this a client component. Whenever you use state and use effect, you have to convert your component to a client component. This logic will run on the front end. If you look at the initial HTML preview, it has loading ... The initial HTML that Google will see. Google will not see user page. Google will not see Harkirat. Google will not see harkirat@gmail.com. Google will see loading ... So Google will be like, I don't know what this page is. So even though we use NextJS, we did not take the benefits of NextJS here, which is why, this is bad. How do we fix this? There are a few ways. Let's start with the simplest one. How do we do real server-side rendering? Right now, the rendering is happening on the client. The state is getting found on the client. The user is getting, this thing is getting filled on the client. That is not this. How can we convert to such an architecture? If you want, feel free to add these pretty CSS and you will see a pretty card over here in the center of your screen. If you want to keep it like this, that is also fine. This will make your thing a little pretty. This is the right way to hit the backend. Using a use effect is one way. That is fine. You can try to do that. But the better way, and we discussed this at the end of last week's class, is कि यार ये जो function है ना, ये जो component है, इसको async बना दो. Step 1, make this component async. Step 2, whatever axios.get you are doing, no need to put it inside a use effect. हटा दो, loading को भी हटा दो, सब कुछ हटा दो. Let's do this. And then यहां पे simply do const response equal to await axios.get, const data equal to response.data. You can do this. What are we doing? Kyar, you don't need the state variable. One, it's much cleaner to look at. So simple, so easy to read. Two, it is now a server component. It doesn't need to be a client component anymore. I am not using use effect or use state. If you are not using use effect and use state, then this can be a server component. It doesn't need to be a client component. But three, the biggest benefit of this is, since this is an async component का मतलब ये नहीं है कि front end पे an async component is coming. It means कि whatever logic is written over here will run on the server. Whatever logic is written over here will run on the server. It will not run on the client. And that is exactly what we wanted. What did we want? Okay, the NextJS server should hit the backend, get the data, and the initial HTML itself should say Harkirat Singh. Let's see, does that happen? Let me save this. Let me restart. You don't have to restart. Let's say I did. And now if I go to localhost 3000/user, notice there is no loading ... If I refresh this again, notice the initial HTML itself is returning user page harkirat@gmail.com. शुरू में ही वो भरा हुआ आ रहा है backend से. It is pre-rendered on the server and I get it back. This is good for SEO, search engine optimization. Notice there is no request that goes out from here. There is no backend request that is going out from here. Of course, if I add a use effect here, जहाँ पे I redo this request, let's say, or do something else, that will run on the client. But by doing this, one, code is much cleaner. Two, the request is going directly from the backend. Page is getting pre-rendered and coming to the front end. सिंपल इनफ, किसी को इसमें कोई डाउट? लेट्स डू अ पोल. All right. No problem at all. We will do a Q&A. But it won't start making requests again and again while rendering. Again and again, it will send a request once. Let me put a log here. Console.log, request went out. If I refresh the page and look at the logs, on the server it says request went out. So this line of code will run once. Whenever someone fetches the data, this line of code will run once. This line of code will run once. This will run once. You will get pre-filled HTML from the backend. It will not send it again and again. How do we handle data fetching in NextJS? Isn't that what we are doing right now? We are fetching data from a component, from a backend, and rendering over here. This is how you do data fetching in NextJS. What if API takes 1 or 2 seconds? How should we show the loader to the user? Great question. It's coming in the next slide. But how this makes SSR? What is SSR? What is server-side rendering? It is, what is rendering? जो भी HTML आपका बन के यहाँ जा रहा है, whenever, if you remember the code that we wrote a while back, this was the code that we wrote a while back with a use effect. What is rendering? Rendering is कि जब भी set data call हो, whenever set data is called, this gets updated. Then the HTML on the page should change. That is what rendering is. Render का मतलब क्या होता है? If you've ever gone to Premiere Pro, if you've ever edited a video, you render it to the end. Render is painting something on the screen, changing something on the screen. So what is client side rendering? कि ये जो process है, converting from loading to data happening on the browser, that is client side rendering. That is what React does. That is what is happening over here. First, I am seeing loading. Then I'm seeing the actual data. There is some bug here. I don't know what I left. I made this async. This is client-side rendering. If I refresh, ये loading dot 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 आ रहा है, and then this आ रहा है. The contents on the page are changing, but they are changing on the front end. That is client-side rendering. What is client? Browser is the client. But if I do the other thing, what did I do? Here, number one, I'm going to make this async. Number two, I'm going to get rid of all of this. Don't need the loader as well. Number three, I'll directly do here const response equal to await axios.get. Const data equal to response.data. Now what is happening? This line of code, this line of code, this line of code, and let's say I do a console.log hi. All these lines of code are running on the server. Server is figuring out, are running where? Are running here. Hi is getting logged where? On the server itself. Hi is getting logged here. It is not getting logged on the browser. It is getting logged on the server. So that means ये तीनों line of code server पे चली. Server created the HTML. Server rendered the HTML. Server converted this HTML user page harkirat@gmail.com and it returned it. User में जो HTML आ रहा है, सर्वर ने रेंडर करके भेजा. सर्वर rendered it and sent it. Server ran this line of code. Server ran this line of code. This line of code. Server rendered the HTML and returned you the HTML. If I look at the response here, इसमें भरा भुरा आ रहा है HTML. Pre-rendered HTML is coming from the server. That is what is server-side rendering. Can we say that NextJS server is like a middleman? You can say that. It does a bunch of other things, but yes, it is like a middleman. But also, यहाँ पे मैं सीधा database से भी बात कर सकता हूँ. I could have also done, we have gone through Prisma, right? So I could have done prisma.user.find1. I can do this. I can do mongoose.user.find. So it's not just a middleman. It is a middleman between the server, but then an express server is also a middleman between a client and a database. So you can think of it as a middleman right now, but usually ऐसा नहीं होता कि your NextJS back server is talking to your backend. Your backend is in the NextJS server or your NextJS server is talking to the database. ऐसा नहीं होता कि your backend, it rarely happens, but yes, for now you can say that. Can we able to do SSR in plain JavaScript project? Plain JavaScript project has no concept of R. There is no rendering over there. Rendering is something introduced by React. Okay, state is getting changed. You are re-rendering something on the screen. So pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript is anyways pre-hydrated on the server. If you're sending backend requests and if you're calling that process rendering, then sure, it happens on the client. It does not happen on the server. There are ways to do it, but if you're doing it, you're sort of creating Next.js yourself by adding server-side rendering. Last thing I didn't understand the async part. ठीक है, एक बार फिर से देख लेते हैं. This though you should have as muscle memory. This because if you look at any code base, CMS, you will see a lot of pages have this. If I go to source/app/ let's say even the what is the first page on app.nextjs.com, it is after I log in, the first page here is /home. So if I look at the home endpoint here, app/home, home ही था ना. Let's look at the landing endpoint, redirects to /home. So a slightly easier thing to see is this. The landing page of app.nextjs.com, if I log out, ये जो landing page है, इसका कोड पढ़ते हैं एक बार. What is the landing page? source/app/page.tsx. यही तो था हमारे कोड में भी. Whatever was at app/page.tsx got rendered on the landing page. CMS का भी ये है. Notice यहाँ पे भी क्या है? This is an async function. It is getting something over here. Now this is something else. This is getting data from the session. This is getting the send data. It's not hitting the backend, but it is trying to see ये बंदा logged in है कि नहीं. And then अगर नहीं logged in है, or sorry, if they are logged in, send them to the home page. If they are not logged in, then render the landing page. So can you see this is a pattern? You await something at the top. You get the data, whatever data you need, course ka data, your whatever submissions on app.nextjs.com, what timestamp you are on a specific video, ye sab you get over here, and then you render it, so that the user sees all of it at once. So this is a common pattern you will see in Next.js for data fetching. कि अगर data कुछ भी लाना है, get it at the top of your component, convert your component to be an async component, get all the data that you want, and then decide what to render, क्या data डालना है. Same thing we are doing. At the top over here, I am getting the data that I want in this variable and then rendering it here. बंदे को पूरा rendered page ही मिल रहा है. Person is getting the full rendered page. Same thing is happening here. We check is the user logged in. If they are logged in, we send them to the home page. If they are not logged in, then we render the landing page. अब जल्दी से आगे figure out करो ये home page मुझे मिला क्यों नहीं. Where is this /home component render? Oh, it's probably here then. main/pages/home. There you go. We'll understand what this is. ये brackets very soon. But this is where the home component is. यहाँ पे भी देख लो top पे we are doing something. क्या is this person this thing or not? If they are not logged in, send them to the landing page. Else render the main thing over here. इसमें there are my courses. Let's go to this my courses component. add/component/my courses. add/components/my courses कहाँ गया? my courses. यहाँ पे if I go, क्या हो रहा है टॉप पे? कंपोनेंट के टॉप पे वी आर गेटिंग इस बंदे ने, ये बंदा कौन है, what all courses has they purchased, and based on that we are rendering. If the person has not purchased anything, give them this, else render all their courses. That is what happens on this page. ये पेज में the courses that you see, the purchases that you see are also stored somewhere. So if you look at this my courses component that renders this page, what are we doing? We are getting all the courses of the person first. क्या इस बंदे का डिटेल्स क्या है, इज ही लॉग्ड इन और नॉट, इस बंदे के परचेजेस क्या हैं, व्हाट ऑल हैज ही परचेज्ड, returning the purchase from me. I could write all these 3 lines of code directly over here as well. I just put it in a separate function. I get those details. If there's an error, then we throw an error. If there is no purchase, बंदे ने कुछ खरीदा ही नहीं है, then we show them this, no course is found. If there is a purchase, we render those purchases over here. So now do we understand this weird data fetching pattern? What is the benefit of using? It's weird because async components weren't a thing. यहाँ से they were introduced किया, use async components only. This got rid of the need of a lot of state management libraries, and made them obsolete. That's why we have recoil here in app.nextjs.com, but it's rarely used because it's नहीं पड़ती अब. You don't get data from somewhere, store it in some state variable or in some state management library. Directly get it over here, store it in the context, pass it down the prop chain and work with it. Now do we understand this? I'm assuming you do वैसे, मतलब अब तो आ गया होगा, फिर भी पोल कर लेते हैं. Meanwhile, I'll move on to a question that someone asked right now कि हरकीरत, how do we show the loaders now? अब तो loading दिख ही नहीं रही है. What if it takes 2 seconds for the data to come? So there are 2 questions to answer here. पहला है कि do you want to even show the loader? अभी हमने क्या बोला कि यार we want this page to be SEO optimized. We want this page to get data filled from the backend. तो in that case तो loading दिखा मत देना. If you show loading in that case, then Google server will see loading over here. SEO crawlers will see loading over here. That's a problem. So you have to first decide. Here, even if the backend request takes 2 seconds, that was the question that the person asked in chat. Here, Kirat, what if this request takes 5 seconds? What if this request takes 10 seconds? So what will the user see over here? Let's simulate it. Let's add a sleep over here. Await new promise. Let me simulate a sort of sleep for 5 seconds here. Here, if you don't understand this code, just GPT will tell you. This is how you sort of remain stuck here for 5 seconds. उसके बाद data reaches here. I'm just trying to simulate कि अगर इस request ने 5 second ले लिए, if this request takes 5 seconds, what do we see on the front end? Let's see. If I now refresh, let me not refresh. Let me open a new tab, paste it. Open the network tab. And now let me go to the /user endpoint. This request is pending. Nothing came back. 4, 5. After 5 seconds, I got back this, which is good for us because we want this to be SEO optimized. We don't care to show the user a loader. But sometimes you want the user to see a loader. For example, neon.tech mein when I go, there is a loader here. There are loaders here. There are skeletons everywhere. Did you see them? Let me refresh. Loader, loader, loader everywhere. यहाँ पे we don't need SEO optimization. Google is never going to log into हरकीरत's account. Google के crawler के पास मेरे credentials नहीं है. They don't need to reach this page. They don't need to reach console.neon.tech/app/projects. And similarly, if this is a user card, Google doesn't want to index individual user details. Google wants to index globally आप करते क्या हो? What does this application do? तो specifically for this page, it actually makes sense for there to be a loader. There should be a loader that shows loading and then the data should come. So uske liye you can either use the original approach, the React approach of fetching data and rendering it on the client, or a more NextJS approach here is कि यार अगर आपको पता है there are a few awaits over here, if you know you are going to get stuck over here and stuck over here for 5 seconds, there are a few asynchronous operations happening, you can add a loading.tsx here. Right next to page.tsx, add a loading.tsx. यहाँ पे export default function, you can call it whatever you want, and यहाँ पे return a spinner, a loader, whatever you want. Let's say I return loading ... What did I do? Right next to page.tsx in the same folder, I added a loading.tsx. I'm not sure if it's called loading.tsx or skeleton.tsx. I think it's loading.tsx. And यहाँ पे I return loading ... अब क्या होगा? What does NextJS do? File-based rendering. NextJS knows here I need to render this. I need to render this on the /user endpoint. And NextJS also knows here if whatever is getting rendered here on the /user endpoint, if this is a lot of asynchronous operations, if this is stuck for a really long time, so I will fall back to this. जब तक ये सारे रन नहीं होते, I will fall back to this UI. This is the fallback loading UI. NextJS already handles this. As long as it's called loading.tsx, इसका नाम अगर आपने ये लिखा है, just like you have named this page.tsx. If you name this loading.tsx, then loading dot 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 will appear until these 3 lines of code run, and then it will get the HTML and return it back. So that's how you show a loader with server-side rendering. This request still happens on the backend. We did not bring it to the front end. That is another way, the original way we saw. But this is a better way. Server पे ही rendering हो रही है. But until the rendering is happening, because the rendering is a time-consuming process, fall back to this. Let's see it in action. If I now refresh, I see loading for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then I see the data. If you look at the initial HTML, उसमें क्या आएगा? उसमें loading आएगा, and that is fine. Initial HTML gets back, user all over here. Loading followed by this. I think it was being streamed actually. If I refresh, /user, preview, I think it's being streamed. Like it did not immediately get wo, but it got loading initially, and then पूरा भर के आया वो. You can stream data using HTTP also. तो there you go. पहले loading dot 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 आया और थोड़ी देर बाद the actual content came. So it depends on you whether or not you want to show the loader initially or you want to show the data immediately. अगर आपको data immediately show करना है, then don't add a loading.tsx. But if you want to show a loader first, but still want to do server-side rendering, still want to write code like this, then just add a loading.tsx. इसमें जो भी logic लिखा होगा, that logic will be the fallback UI until all of these lines of code run. समझ आया? Do we understand loading.tsx? Last week we did layout.tsx. That is another thing. वो last week की वीडियो में जाके देखना कि what does layout.tsx do. This is what loading.tsx does. Great. 92% is beautiful. Let's proceed to the next slide. Introducing API routes. Now let's get into the backend. This was primarily what we had to cover today. So let's quickly do it. The benefits of writing backend code in NextJS are code in a single repository. Great. All standard things that you would get in a backend framework: get request handling, post request handling, returning status codes from the backend, headers, so on and so forth. Server components can directly talk to the backend. Yeah, I mean, that's not a benefit. Like they can talk to a different backend, your backend doesn't matter. पहले दो are decent enough benefits for you to write backend code in Next.js. Let's see how it's written. Let's move our backend to our own repo. Yes. Now, let's not use this external backend. Let's remove dependency for them. Let's migrate our backend code to our Next.js code base. कहाँ पे हो रहा था ये? /API/v1/user/details. ठीक है जी. तो I will go to my code base and I will add a route handler this time. What were we writing until now? Page handlers. What are we writing now? Route handlers. So what is the endpoint? API. So let me create an API folder here. What is the next endpoint? V1. So let me create a V1 folder here. User. Okay. Sorry, this should be API V1. I can actually write it here. User. API V1 user details. अब यहां पे if I add a page.tsx तो क्या होगा? Page.tsx. If I add a page.tsx here and let's say export default function page. If I do this, then what will I see on localhost :3000/API/v1/user/details? I will see that HTML. What do I want to see here? I want to see this JSON. So can I somehow return JSON here? Let's see. ये कर सकते हैं क्या? Name Harkirat. Can I do this? No, I can't. I can't return objects. It is a component expects JSX to be returned. I can't do this. We are very close. करना कुछ ऐसा ही है. But I can't write page.tsx. I am not returning a page. I am not returning HTML from here. It is a backend route. It might return text. It might return HTML. It might return JSON. So for that, I need to convert this to a route.ts. Doesn't even have to be TSX. We are not dealing with any XML here. We won't be writing any HTML here. तो I create API v1 user details route.ts. मैंने ये फाइल बना दी. अब यहाँ पे we have to learn the new syntax for backend handling. That's the syntax for front-end handling, for pages. Return a component that returns some HTML, do all the data fetching here. Backend का क्या है? Pretty simple. Create a file called route.ts and यहाँ पे export function get that for now let's say returns next response. Next response comes from next/server .json user Harkirat email harkirat@gmail.com. That is how you create a get endpoint handler on /API/v1/user/details. I am not exporting by default a function called user handler. I am not returning XML. I am not returning HTML. This is a backend handler. So I am not doing this. I am doing this. इसके और इसके बीच में फर्क समझ आता है. What is a default export and what are constant exports हमें समझ आते हैं. नहीं आते हैं तो पढ़ लेना. Very important. What does this default thing do? What happens when I remove this? Is a very important distinction that can be asked in an interview. Generally, you should know. So what is a default export? जो default export होता है, that is imported like this. Import user handler from /user handler. That's a default export. And a constant export like this is imported like this. Import get from this thing. Since we can have multiple types of handlers on API v1 user details, I could have a post handler also. So that is why we don't export by default. अगर मुझे post handler बनाना है मैं ऐसे बना दूंगा. Let's say our post handler so for now does this only. अगर मुझे put handler बनाना है तो I can do this. So that is how you can handle backend requests of any type, be it a get request, be it a post request, be it a put request. Where do you have to put it? Route.ts. What are the things that you have to export? Get, post, put endpoints. Let's see, does it work? Now if I go to /API/v1/user/details, I see JSON. Oh, oopsie daisy. So have I now sort of added backend to my NextJS project? Yes. Can I now go to the page that we had and remove the very complicated backend that we had with localhost :3000/API v1 user details? यही तो है. This is where we have created the backend. I can replace it with this, or I can simply say /API/v1/user/details. This would send the request at the current URL. Whenever this page is hosted, /API/v1/user/details, उसी endpoint पे request भेज देगा. It will automatically add localhost :3000 in front of it. So I can either write this or write this, either is fine. But either way, if I now go to the original page that I had, /user, ये फट गया. Can I not add this? Probably can add it on a client, but ठीक है. Can't do it on the server. Probably because the server doesn't have a window.location object. Ignore what I said before this. If you have a server component, you definitely can't do this. You have to add the URL, which in our case is this. You can also put it as a constant somewhere, front end endpoint, and put that constant here, or just hard code it to localhost :3000 for now. If I refresh now, loading followed by, let me remove the 5-second thing that I have here. Loading की जरूरत ही नहीं है अब, because it's server side rendered. Actually, I should have seen loading for a little bit here. We have a loading.tsx, right? It's happening too fast. It's on the same server, right? Front end and back end are on the same server now. ये endpoint उसी server पे है जहाँ request आई. What is happening now? What was happening before was this. This was our NextJS server, which was running on localhost :3000. This was our backend, which was running on Kirat Technologies.workers.dev. This is how we had written code before. तो So what was happening is I sent a request, I get back a loader. This request went to the backend. Since the backend is very far from me, took like a second to come back, and then the actual data came back to me. That is what is happening before. Now we migrated this backend to our own code base. So now when it's sending the request, it's sending it here only. तो इतना जल्दी हो रहा है कि I don't even see the loader. The loader doesn't even appear. इतनी जल्दी हो जाता है वो. The backend ticket goes so quick, I don't see the loader. So have we migrated a very easy backend to our Next.js project? Do I need this anymore? I don't. I have migrated my very complicated, Express backend, let's say, over to my Next.js server. Not just a get handler. I've also created a post handler and a put handler. If I go to Postman and try to hit the post endpoint here, that will also return me this. The put endpoint here, that will also return me this. Let's try it out. API/v1/user/details. If I send a post request there, I don't see anything. API v1 user details. Could not send request. This needs to be 3000. Send the request. I get back the data. If I send a put request, I get back the data. If I send a delete request, 405 method not allowed. There is no method. There's no handler for delete on the backend right now. But if I go here and add a delete handler, that let's say returns Harkirat delete. Then I send the request, I get back Harkirat delete here. So that's how you create backend endpoints. Now there are a bunch of questions. How do you connect to a database? That's pretty much the biggest question. How do you add headers? How do you get query parameters? How do you get request body? So on and so forth. There are some questions to answer. But Next.js lets you write backend endpoints. Do we understand this very simple thing? How to write backend endpoints in Next.js? Let's do a poll. %8 is decentish. Let's move on for now. I'll take doubts at the end. All right. Let's create a front end for signing up. Signing up database. Okay. Let's get a simple authenticated Next.js application. I think, that's probably the next step. How do you now write a full stack application that has Prisma, Postgres, front end, back end, user authentication, to do application, things like these? So let's move on to that next. We have all the pieces in the place. We understand the front end. We understand how to write the back end. Of course, back end में भी कुछ चीजें सीखनी है. We'll learn them on the go. Let's try to add authentication to our program. तो पहले के लिए front end लिखेंगे. First, we will write the front end. Let me delete everything. Let me delete all the folders. So you and I are on the same page. If you're just starting a fresh Next.js application, you and I will see the same thing. Only thing is landing page पे मैंने hi there लिख दिया. Let me write whatever to do application. Name equal to text dash lg w dash screen h dash screen flex item center justify center. So now if I go to the landing page, I see to do application, and let me add two more buttons here for signing in and signing up. Here let me introduce, I don't think we've covered this, the link tag in Next.js. Link tag in Next.js is similar to the a tag in HTML. It lets you move from one page to another. So let me add a link to, or might be href here, /signin. Sign in to do app and then sign up. Sign up to do application. I've added two buttons over here so that the application looks something like this. To do application, sign in to do app, sign in to do. I mean, make them, feel free to make it cleaner or whatever, class name equal to text dash md border p dash 3. You get the idea. Like make it as pretty as possible. Doesn't matter. I have a to-do application, sign into to-do app, sign up to-do app. When I click on sign into to-do app, it takes me to the /sign-in page. When I click on sign up to to-do app, it takes me to the /sign-up page. So this is a better way to do routing in Next.js, going from one page to another. There is another way. That one will lead to a lot of complications. Let me show you, but if you don't understand it, ignore it. The other way is this. Okay, you don't do this and you create a button. When you click on it, there is a function handler. And यहाँ पे, I do a router.push/signin, where router I can get from here. Const router equal to use router. From next/navigation, get the use router hook, define the router over here, and after you click on the button, do a router.push/signin. ये भी आप कर सकते हो. If I do this, पहला error you will see is you have to make this a client component. So let's make it a client component. And now if I click on sign in, it still happens. I still go to the /signin page, but this is not a good way to do Next.js. If you've seen the recent Devon video of mine, I talk about something similar. You can't do prefetching here. What is prefetching? Go to the recent Devon video. So this is the bad way to do routing from one page to another. This is the good way to do routing from one page to another in Next.js. So let me get rid of this, get rid of the router, get rid of the use router hook. Also make it a server component. We have a sign in page, sign up page. What's the next step? Create the sign in and the sign up page. So let me quickly go here. App/sign in/page.tsx and app/whatever, let's say sign up/page.tsx. Okay, I've created two pages over here. Thankfully, I've written some front-end logic, so let me just copy it. This is like a very pretty sign-in component. So let me just copy this. It has a few parts. Let's keep it simple only. It's not too difficult. There's a labeled input function or a component. It has some types. If you've not gone through TypeScript, it might get a little hard to read this. So let me write it from scratch. If you copy this, you'll see a easier to look at, or a cleaner front end. But let me write it from scratch. Export default function, return div. Let me name this also. You don't have to name it, but let me name it. Class name equal to w-screen, h-screen, flex, justify, center, items, center. Create a div, class name equal to border, p-2. This is like a card. इसके अंदर I'm going to add an input type equal to text, and whatever, placeholder equal to your name, and then type equal to password, placeholder equal to password, and then I'll add a button, sign in. That's the sign in component. And when you click on the button is when, of course, we have to send a request to a backend /API/v1/signin, right? So that's what we have to prefill over here. Whenever you introduce a button, more technically, when you introduce a on-click handler, you have to convert this to a client component as well. So it needs to be a client component. Only then can you add button over here. There are more optimizations you can do here. You can create a different button component that's a client component, keep this a server component, but let's not go there. Two input boxes and a button. Oh boy. /signin. I see a simple sign in page over here. I can put data and click on the sign in button. Similarly, I need to create a sign up page. So let me copy this, go to sign up/page.tsx and create a sign up component. Rather than saying signing in here, I will say sign up. What's the next step? The next step is यहाँ पे I have to do some axios.post. यहाँ पे I don't have to add the prefix. I can simply do /API/v1/sign up, let's say. And similarly, in the sign in page, what do I have to do? /API/v1/sign in. यही करना है, simple enough. Let's focus on the sign up page for now. because this has to do a bunch of things. It needs to hit the backend. Backend needs to hit the database, put the data in there, return a JWT token, whatever. We'll talk about that. So this backend endpoint we should create next. But we have to send some data here, right? We have to send the username and the password over here. How can I get the username that is written over here? How can I get the password that is written over here? There are two ways. One way is this, slightly unoptimal, जो यहाँ हो रहा है. There are two state variables here, username and password. As the user clicks on the input, you can update these state variables. The problem there is the component renders too much. Every time you call set username, which will happen every time you write something here, the component will re-render. So it's slightly unoptimal. So यहाँ पे there are libraries you can use, React hook forms, or you can use refs. So feel free to pick which approach deems fit to you. This is one approach of filling username and password as state variables. Let me show that to you. Create a state variable called username. Create a state variable called password. Whenever user adds something here on change, whenever the first input may someone adds something, set the username state variable to be e.target.value. E stands for event. E.target stands for this input box. E.target.value कि मतलब इसके अंदर अब वैल्यू क्या है उसको इस वेरिएबल में स्टोर कर लो, so that as the person types, this username is in sync with what is written over here. अगर यहाँ पे ASD is written, then this username is also set to ASD. This is one way to do it. Let's just stick to this way. The other way is using refs. I'm sure you guys can figure that out. ये हमने मतलब refs में exactly same thing we have discussed also. On change equal to, यहाँ पे I'll set password e.target.value. यहाँ पे e.target would be this input box. e.target.value would be whatever is the value inside over here. So these two have been pre-filled. Now I can just send a backend request to /API/v1/signup with this username and password. Let's confirm, is that right? Click on inspect, go to the network tab, click on sign in. There is a sign in request that goes out. And if you look at the body, there is no body in here. Axios.post. Pretty sure you can do what I've done, but let's see. Refresh, put some username, put some password, click on sign in. Let me log username and password here. Click on sign in. Look at the log. Oh, sorry. Sign up. My bad. I have to write the logic in the sign up. I've written the logic in the sign up page. I was in the sign up page over here. I was looking at the sign in page over here. Now let me go to the sign up page. Put some data here, put some data here, go to the network tab, clear everything, click on sign up. And now if you look at sign up, payload mein username and password is going. Let me remove this body. Whatever username and password I have set is going to /API/v1/sign up. We are still to implement this backend endpoint, but data तो सही तरीके से backend पे जा रहा है. Question is, how do we implement this backend endpoint? We have done it once. What do we have to do? Create a folder called API, create a folder called V1, create a folder called sign up, and इसके अंदर add a route.ts file. I want to create another backend route. What method is the backend route? What am I doing? Axios.post I am doing. So export function post. Eventually I have to return next response.json, some message over here, okay, you have been signed up, something like this. Question is, how do I get the request.body here? How do I even get request here? Answer is, यहाँ पे you do get access to a request object. whose type is this next request. And you say you can extract whatever you want. You can extract query parameters, you can extract request headers, you can extract the body as well. The way to extract the body is const data equal to await rec.json. Let me make this an async function. And this will extract the body that came from the front end. What is the body that we were sending, if you remember? The body was something like this, username and password. I can now get it over here by awaiting rec.json. Let's try to log it and see, is that right? Let me log rec.json से जो भी return हुआ on the server. Let me click on sign up again. And you can see username and password backend पे आ गए. I have access to username and password over here. What is the next step? Store this data in the backend. That's the next big thing we have to cover. How can you store this data in the backend? Then when the user signs in, how can you return them cookies? How can you return them JWT? वो next चीज है. अभी के लिए one last thing we have to do today. How do you store data in a backend? How can you use Mongoose over here? How can you use Prisma over here? How can you use the PG library over here? So let's understand that next. To recap, what did we do in this section? We created a landing page. Where there are two buttons, sign in and sign up. If I click on the sign up button, it takes me to a page like this. Here, if I put some data, click on the sign up button, it sends a request to the backend. On the backend, I have access to the data that the user gave me. I am logging it and confirming that username and password is coming to the backend. Now over here, I somehow have to do a mongoose.user.insert or have to do a pg.query insert into users table, write the SQL query, or best thing is prisma.user.update, something like this. One of these three things I have to do. That's actually not too difficult to do, but एक break लेते हैं छोटा सा. Let's do a poll first. Do we understand this? And if we do, then I'll quickly move to database. Then we can do Q&A. Otherwise, do we understand this? Yes or no? Yeah, काफी जनता अटक गई. So Q&A. Let me push the code so the people who want to see can see it. Week 19, next backend, public repository. Git init, git add, git commit, init, git remote, add origin, push. There we go. So here is the code in case you want to look at it. But let me also look at Q&A for 5 minutes, then we'll move to databases. It's sign up page, yeah, thank you. In React, we used to put fetch inside useEffect hook to avoid inconsistencies during re-render. Then why are we not doing it right now? We used to put fetch inside useEffect hook. We used to fetch data inside a useEffect hook, yes. What is that called? That's client-side rendering. What does NextJS do? Server-side rendering. That is why we are not putting it inside a useEffect. If you don't use Twitter, use Twitter. Sign up and send me a message on Handexters, right? It's open. Anyone can send a message there. In React, we used to put, answer that. Is the method of data fetching valid when the backend is in Node.js as well? Does rendering of the loading page decrease as your score? It should, right? I don't know. I haven't tested it. I would assume it does. If you're getting back loading first and then getting the data, versus if you're just getting the data, it might. I don't know. It might not also. Because eventually you do get the data. Hello, sir. I don't use Twitter. How can I? Answer that. ये तो coconut water. Will SSR cause lag on large scale? No. If you're scaling your infrastructure correctly, then SSR won't cause it. If you're not scaling it correctly, even client-side rendering would have, the same thing. Quick recap. How to move from sign up to sign in after submitting? Yeah, it's simple enough. if I'm on the sign up page, I do, whatever, all of this happens. I send, whatever, await axios.post, make this an async function, and then do a router.push/sign in. And where does router come from? We discussed a while back. Const router equal to use router. Where should you get router from? Next/navigation. So import use router from here. Do a const router equal to use router. And then after the Axios request is done, do a router.push/sign in. So now if I go to the sign up page, put some data here, click on sign up. I see an error because backend is down. Let me start the backend, try it one more time. Go to the sign up page, put some data in here, click on sign up, and now it got redirected to the sign in page. It's as simple as that. Q&A. How can we write middlewares in Next.js? It's a great question. Middlewares in Next.js are really bad. We'll talk about when we reach middlewares in Next.js, but there's no easy way to do route specific middlewares in Next.js. You can do global middlewares, but route specific middlewares are, very weird. We'll come to when the time comes. Trying to see if I can find more question. If you host Next.js on your own server, it will not cost too much, but it will still be more than a React project. So React projects are very cheap to distribute. Next.js projects are slightly expensive for sure. Not too expensive though. If you hit scale, you can figure out a few optimizations, do static site generation, serve them via CDN, so on and so forth. Using Load.tsx SEO, what is SEO optimized? I'm assuming you mean SEO optimized. And from based on what I just saw, in the same request, you first get loading and then eventually get the data. So I would assume it is SEO optimized. It might not be as SEO optimized as not using loading, but it would still be SEO optimized. What did you put? Yep. Can you create WebSockets in Next.js? No, you cannot. Probably a good thing. I think there's no need for the framework to become this bloated. WebSocket servers keep separate. How to add role-based protection in Next.js? Usually it's done by middlewares. For example, all admin endpoints on app.nextjs.com are handled by this middleware, or authentication there is handled by. Let me quickly show you. Code100x/CMS. There is this global middleware source/middleware.ts, jahan pe we check is this user an admin or not. And if they're not an admin, we stop sending them to certain pages. So this became very complicated very quickly. But if I can quickly show you, actually this doesn't do that. This does something else. This does the logging out of bit. If two people are logging in the same place, we sort of log the other person out. I thought we had admin-based protect, but basically, long story short, यहाँ पे you can check all in the middleware that I was talking about. There's a global middleware. वहाँ पे you can check if this user is an admin or not, and if they're trying to access a page that they don't have access to, you can redirect them to an invalid page or something like that. The same thing happens here. If two people log in, you get redirected to a page called invalid session. If someone else logged in with your ID, so you get logged out. That logic is over here. Cool. Let me recap and then we'll move on. Long and short, what we've done until now is we created a Next.js project today where we added app/signup/page.tsx for the HTML of the signup page, app/signin/page.tsx for the HTML of the sign in page, and app/api/v1/signup/route.ts for the backend route at /signup. These are the three things that we created. Then on the front end, I first go to http://localhost:3000/signup. That shows me two input boxes, input box number 1, input box number 2, and a button. The button says sign up. When you click on sign up, we hit this sign up route. The route does nothing right now. It just gets access to whatever username was written here and whatever password was written here, and responds back with a 200 status code. Then we did a router.push/signin. That redirects the person to the /signin page, and वहाँ पे they see something similar with sign in. यहाँ से comes the story of authentication in Next.js. How do you do auth in Next? Which is not too hard to do, but slightly hard to do yourself, which is why people use frameworks like NextAuth. We'll come to that next week. But sign in के बाद की story बात की है. अभी के लिए we have to focus on sign up. So how does, when this backend endpoint is hit, how does it put data in the database? Thankfully, it is no different than how you would do it in Express. Express में आपको Mongoose use करना था तो क्या करते? If you had to use Mongoose in Express, you would do npm install mongoose at type/mongoose. You would create the schemas, and then in your route, you would simply do यहाँ पे mongoose.user.insert. Same thing you have to do. Let's say we want to use Prisma. How do you use Prisma? Do we remember from few weeks ago when we used it or understood it? You first do npm install Prisma. It will be in the slides as well. So if you go to the slides, next one, backend for signing up. This is the simple backend that we have created. We got the body, we logged the body. Now we have to understand databases. How can you add Prisma to a Next.js project? Pretty straightforward. सबसे पहले get a database for yourself. You can use something like Avian, or you can use something like Neon. So if I go to neon.tech, let me get myself a new database. Click on new project. Database class week 19. I open this project. Let me copy this Postgres string from here. Keep it handy for now. Then what do you do after you get the database for Prisma? You do an npm install Prisma. I have already done npm install Prisma. Then what do you do? npx Prisma init. What did this command do if you remember? This command would create a Prisma /schema.prisma file. ठीक है जी. What did we have to do in this schema.prisma file? All of this is covered already in Prisma, which is why I'm sprinting through it, but feel free to go to last week's class where we discussed Prisma. I create a model. Let's say for now, I just want a user who will have an ID, which will be a integer. By default, it will be auto incremented. And it's also the ID for this table. And it will have a username, which will be a string. It will have a password, which will be a string. Fairly simple schema for now. ठीक है जी. To recap, what did I do? I got myself access to a database. I did npm install Prisma, the ORM that we are using. npx Prisma init to create a schema file. This schema.prisma. Added the schema in there. Replaced .env with our Postgres URL, Postgres database URL. What is my Postgres database URL? I got it from neon.tech. So it will be this. If you create locally, you'll have your local database credentials. For now, we're just getting one for free from neon.tech. Copy this. Go to the global.env, this file right here, and replace database URL with this. This is my Prisma database URL. Save it. What should I do next? Let's go back to the slides. क्या होता है इसके बाद का step? Migrate the database. npx Prisma migrate dev. What will this do? कि जो database अभी खाली पड़ा है. If you go to the tables, I don't see any tables in here yet. It's empty. But code तो मैंने लिख दिया था. I wrote my model over here, the users table. So what does npx Prisma migrate to? It migrates the database. It puts the user table over there. So that is the next step. That is what I'm doing right now. npx Prisma migrate dev migrates the database. This is the name of my migration. I'm calling it init schema. It's taking a long time because I'm not running it locally. If you were running it locally, it would have happened like this. इसके बाद का step आपको याद है? After you migrate the database, what do? You generate the client. Harkeet, what is the client? Go back to last week. Client is what lets you connect to the database in a type safe manner. The client is something you generate based on this model that you've written. If you see over here, there is a generator written. Generator client use Prisma client.js. So we use this library to generate a client based on this model. Now what is a client? Prisma class, covered it very well. Migration is taking a long time. There we go. Done. Our database has migrated. How can I confirm? Now if I go over here and refresh, you will see I have a users table and a Prisma migrations table. Ignore this one. User table apna ban gaya. ID, username, password. Only thing that's left is putting data in there. How can you do that? सबसे पहले generate the client. npx prisma generate. What does this do? It creates a new folder called @prisma/client. So if I go to node modules /@prisma for prisma/client, ये folder को बना देता है. This folder has the files that I can use to connect to the database. जैसे mongoose.user.insert करते थे, वैसे ही now I can do const import prisma client from @prisma/client. This is good enough. Import prisma client from @prisma/client. Const prisma client equal to new prisma client. And now I can simply do prisma client dot user dot क्या होता है, insert होता है, add होता है, add create. Okay, I just want to create a new user. इसका username is data.username. Password is data.password. Nothing changes compared to an Express application. A few things change. We'll come to them in the upcoming slides. But मोटा मोटा अभी तक तो कुछ change नहीं हुआ है. Everything is the same. You get a global Prisma folder where you have your schema, migrate your schema, it generates the migrations get applied, create a client, import the client over here, do an insert over here. Maybe let's await it as well, but simple enough. Let's see, does it work? If I go to my sign up page now, let me start my NextJS project. Go to the sign up page, put some data here, hakirat@gmail.com, 123 as the password. Click on sign up. I got redirected to sign in, which probably means the data has been inserted in the database. Let me refresh the data. And notice the entry has been added to the database. So now we have a full stack application. I'm able to sign up. Data gets put in the database. Simple enough. Let's do a poll. Recap. Before the poll, let me recap. Steps are in this slide. Create a database, run it locally, or use a provider like AVN or neon.db. npm install Prisma, add the Prisma as a dependency. npx Prisma init, initialize schema.prisma. Create a simple user model, or it'll be more complex as you add a to-do application, so on and so forth. Replace .env with your database URL. npx Prisma migrate dev to migrate your database. npx Prisma generate to generate the client. And I'm using the client over here directly, but if you look at my code base, I first have to import Prisma client from @prisma/client, generate the Prisma client over here, or whatever, create an instance of the Prisma client over here, and then do a prisma.user.create, and that creates my username and password. That entry goes to the database. This is the only code change that I did. Everything else was the bootstrapping of Prisma and writing my schema. Do we understand this? Are we good to go? Full stack application समझ आ गई? Same thing happens in every other code base that uses Prisma, right? So if you go to code_x/cms, you see a Prisma folder here. It has a schema.prisma over here. It has our complicated schema, NextJS application. Simple enough. Good, Haji. Some small things. Let's go through them really quickly. Middle fetches. ये फ्लैट तो पता नहीं क्या है. Ignore karo. So I think we have done it this way only, so we don't need to. Oh, yeah, one more thing. So abhi tak we were doing this. We had an endpoint /API/user. Let me create one really quickly. We have a post endpoint. I can create a get endpoint. Export async function get next request. That let's say returns you your details. So does a await const user equal to await prisma client dot user dot find first and returns it return next response dot json user. So you can write an endpoint like this, and whenever user goes to their profile page, let's say, you can write something like this. क्या ये बंदे का home page है, user page है? I will fetch data from this endpoint that I have just created. You can do this. This is decent. You are not hitting a separate backend. You are hitting your own backend. यहाँ पे when this HTTP endpoint gets hit, then the control reaches here. You get the user's details from the database. Return it to the client. Simple. But can you do something better? क्या ये करने की भी जरूरत है? Why can't I move this logic directly over here? Why do I have to even create an API endpoint? यहीं पे डाल दो. जो हमारा home component है, profile component है, at the top of this, do a user.find, mongoose.find. इस logic को चाहो तो सीधा component में भी लिख सकते हो. You can write this logic directly in the component as well. You don't really need to hit your own HTTP server and do this logic there. Do the logic directly over here. Only thing that's scary over here is here एक component में database आ गया. If the database comes inside the component, can this client be hit from the front end? क्या हमारे front end पे ये client चला जाएगा? Will my user be able to hit the database? And the answer of course is no. Whatever logic is here stays on the server, never returns to the client. On the client, only the final HTML comes. This user data will not come to the front end. Whatever async function calls you are making here remain on the server. So rather than doing this, rather than hitting yourself on a different API endpoint, don't create the API endpoint. Directly do the database search over there. Unless you need the endpoint in 5 different places or some other reason you have to create the endpoint, that's fine. Sometimes you might have a mobile application in React Native. That application needs a API endpoint. उसके तो बनाना पड़ेगा. But if you only have a NextJS application where this search needs to happen, do the search directly over here. You don't need to create a separate endpoint for doing it. That is what this sort of slide wanted to cover. Hopefully that's simple enough. I'm not doing a poll. Feel free to go through the slide. One small thing, NextJS specific. If you are using Prisma with NextJS, you will not run into this issue on production. If you deploy your application, you'll be fine. You will not run into this issue when you're running it locally, but using a local database, then also you'll be fine. But if you are running your code base locally, like we are, ये code base मैं अपनी machine पे run कर रहा हूँ, I'm running it locally. I'm using this, npm run dev to start it. If you're running it locally and you are using someone else, you are not running the database locally, you are using Avian or Neon for databases, what will happen is as a lot of hot reloading happens. What is hot reloading? I went over here, changed the file, saved it. If I go to localhost 3000 right now, notice the logs. It says compiling, got something compiling, favicon, so on and so forth. But if I change something and save, it compiled again. Change something and save, it compiled again. तो इसमें क्या होगा? बार बार this line of code will run. You will open too many connections to your database. Very small edge case of when you are running your code base locally, but using a database that's on the cloud, you'll create a lot of connections to it. If you run the database locally, you'll create a lot of connections to your local database, but that's not problematic. Your local database limits you can increase, so on and so forth. वहाँ पे also it's a little problematic. It only happens in dev mode. Only happens अगर आप code बदल रहे हो and save कर रहे हो. Only then hot reloading will happen. On your server, you don't change code. You deploy your code and वो वहीं रहता है. Then you restart the process whenever your new deployment happens. So this is a dev mode problem. Whenever you're running NextJS with Prisma in dev mode, if I keep saving, eventually you'll run into an issue that will clearly say, okay, you have too many database connections open. To fix that, one common pattern is, which also, I found the issue, Googled, reached a blog, and mouse blog से I figured out this pattern. The pattern is, create a singleton. Create a singleton. What is a singleton? Singleton कर रखा है एक बार हमने पैटर्न ये, बट सिंगलटन इज बेसिकली कि समथिंग दैट इज डिफाइंड ओनली वंस, डजंट हैव मल्टीपल रेफरेंसेस. हमें भी वही चाहिए. हमें चाहिए अक्रॉस ऑल बिल्ड्स व्हेनेवर इट इज कंपाइलिंग अगेन एंड अगेन, दिस लाइन ऑफ कोड डजंट रन. ये बार बार रन ना हो, एक ही बार रन हो, सिंगली रन हो. तो फॉर दैट what you can do is you can move your Prisma client, ये line of code, you can move it to a separate folder. Let me show how. A separate file. Let me create a app/lib, कहीं भी डाल लो वैसे, but I'm putting it in a lib folder library /db.ts. Let me create a db.ts file. यहाँ पे if I copy this code, what is this code doing? This is just for defining a type. So if you don't add this, you will get some TypeScript issues, so ignore it. Let's add a TS ignore here. Let's focus on the logic. Logic क्या कह रहा है कि यार ये एक फंक्शन डिफाइन किया मैंने, const prisma client singleton, that returns a new instance to Prisma. This returns a new instance of Prisma client, जो मैं यहां कर रहा था already. Whatever I was doing here is now happening in this function. That is one thing. And what this says is कि यार I want to export Prisma, ये variable, which will either be not window, hopefully you understand what window is. Window is this global object here. यहाँ पे there is a global object called window. तो यहाँ पे आप global variables डाल देते हो, window.prisma equal to 1. तो now if I do window.prisma, I can access this one variable again and again. It is a global variable आपने दे दिया जिसको सब access कर पाए. Same thing happens here कि यार Prisma is either window.prisma or global this.prisma because this is the backend and not a frontend, or इस function को call कर दो, या फिर I can't think of a reason why this would be bad. So let's just do this. Simple हो गई थोड़ी फाइल और move it to the end. Key thing is this line of code. कि अगर अभी प्रोडक्शन में नहीं चल रहा, बिकॉज दिस इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम ऑन प्रोडक्शन, दिस इज प्रोडक्शन इन द डेव मोड, दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम व्हेन आई एम रनिंग इट लोकली. इफ इट इज नॉट रनिंग इन प्रोडक्शन, ग्लोबल दिस डॉट प्रिज्मा इक्वल दिस प्रिज्मा वेरिएबल, जैसे मैं कर रहा था विंडो डॉट प्रिज्मा इक्वल टू 1, दे हैव डन ग्लोबल दिस डॉट प्रिज्मा इक्वल टू दिस प्रिज्मा वेरिएबल. बेसिकली होगा क्या, अब आप प्रिज्मा क्लाइंट यहां से इंपोर्ट करोगे. You will not do this again and again in every file. You will do import Prisma client from /lib/db.ts or wherever lib/db is. You will import it from here. You will not define it again here. And यहाँ से जब आप import करोगे उसे, let me see what I'm missing here. API check .. और आ जाएगा. You will import it from here. And इसमें क्या होगा कि अगर आप बहुत बार रीलोड हो रहा है ना, हॉट रीलोडिंग हो रही है, दिस फाइल विल रन अगेन एंड अगेन, बट द फर्स्ट टाइम इट रन्स, ग्लोबल दिस डॉट प्रिज्मा विल बी अनडिफाइंड, तो अ न्यू प्रिज्मा क्लाइंट विल बी क्रिएटेड, बट दिस लाइन ऑफ कोड विल अपडेट ग्लोबल दिस डॉट प्रिज्मा टू बी ये जो नया क्लाइंट बना है. अब जब बार बार रन होगा, देन प्रिज्मा इज सिंपली दिस, नया क्लाइंट नहीं बनेगा. What have we done? यार कोड बेस अगर खाली है एकदम, that is fine, stopped. If I start it the first time, what will happen? This file will import Prisma client from here, and यहाँ पे this line of code will run. This line of code will run. Global this dot Prisma is not a variable right now, तो it will regenerate. What does this question mark do? कि अगर ये exist नहीं करता, then run this line of code. तो this line of code will run. एक प्रिज्मा क्लाइंट बन गया, वन डेटाबेस कनेक्शन हैज बीन मेड. इफ दिस इज नॉट प्रोडक्शन मोड, देन हमने ग्लोबली भी उसको सेट कर दिया कि ग्लोबल दिस डॉट प्रिज्मा इज दिस वेरिएबल. ये जो वेरिएबल आपने बनाया है अभी, ये ग्लोबली सेट हो गया. नाउ इफ अ लॉट ऑफ हॉट रीलोडिंग हैपेंस, देन global this dot prisma will get stored in this variable. We will not regenerate a prisma client. We will not recreate a connection to the database. So that way that error will go away. If you look at CMS, SRC, lib, if you go to db/index.ts, you will see very similar code over here. यहाँ पे भी This is only for dev mode. Like you don't have to worry about this अगर आप सिर्फ prod में कर रहे हो. But if you're doing a lot of local development, then you will need this. You will see this on dub also, I think. If I go to dub.sh, you'll see the same file there. Packages slash prisma slash index.ts client.ts. Let's see if you can find it. There you go. Do you see something, some similar logic here? If process is equal to development, then global.prisma equal to prisma. और ये prisma वेरिएबल क्या है? global.prisma और new prisma client. तो हर जगह ये सिंगलटन पैटर्न यूज हो रहा है. Why? For development mode only. जब आप डेवलप कर रहे हो, if you don't write so much logic, if you simply do export cont prisma client equal to new prisma client, so in every hot reload, more and more of these prisma clients will get generated. You will have too many connections to the database, and then your database will choke. It will tell you that too many connections, max connection limit has been reached. To avoid that, we add this singleton pattern. कि यार पहली बार जब ये line run हो, तो पहली बार this does run, but when it's second time this file runs, then global.prisma already exists, so we don't have to rerun the new prisma client. That is common pattern across any repository not to regenerate a prisma client in dev mode. Do we understand this? One thing is left, which is server actions. We'll do it next time, which will probably be an offline video next week. Single pattern समझ आ सा गया है थोड़ा. ठीक है, that is hard also. So if you don't understand, it's fine. Go back to the video. You don't need it initially. कोई पूछ सकता है इंटरव्यू में, मैं तो पूछूंगा. But even if you don't do it, it will still work. We saw उससे पहले चल रहा था. There's something extra that we had. 80% understood, 20% did not. The people who did not understand, go through the video again. Can't go through the video. There's a blog post from where everyone copies this. It's an official Prisma blog post. Go over there. Try to understand it from there. Don't understand again, then use it. इसको use तो करना ही. Slowly try to understand if you don't understand it. Or don't use it. And then eventually you will run into this issue when you will create an application. If you create a real application, if you're actually writing NextJS code, aggressively, debugging, changing things, writing a new feature, so eventually you will run into this issue. Google the issue, read the solution and go from there. Cool. Done hai, sir. That's all for the class. I'll open chat now. We'll talk for a bit. Again, there's no class tomorrow, most probably. There's no class tomorrow. I'll cover this in an offline video, and next week we'll do next auth. All right. Aryan, Node.js streams. Bhai bahut persistent hai yaar. We should create it for him. He's been asking for a while. What change should we do if you're doing Mongoose instead of Prisma? No changes. Go here. npm install mongoose. db.ts mein, I mean, if you want to create it separately, so just add your schema here, okay, whatever. Let me add the mongoose types here. npm install at types/mongoose. Import schema, model from mongoose. Const user schema equal to new schema. Username string, password string, const or export const user model equal to whatever the syntax, I forgot it now, but user schema. Maybe do a mongoose.connect here, probably do it inside a singleton only. And then ये user schema जो यहाँ से export हुआ है, of course give it the database URL here, put it in a .env file. Whatever user model is exported from here, import it over here. Import from the same place, and then you can do a user model.insert and go from there. Simple, same thing. What's Neo.tech? It is a free service. It's a service for databases. It gives you one free database. So if you want to get a free Postgres database, you use it. Cool. What is hot module reloading exactly in Next.js? Hot module reloading. Forget that. Module reloading. If I'm over here, on the landing page, I see this. Let me open this on the right. Let me open the code on the left. Let me go to the landing page का code. यहाँ पे if I change this to do application 1 and save it, it automatically appears over here without the page reloading. If the full page reloaded, that would be module reloading. That would not be hot module reloading. The fact that I changed something here and it somehow automatically appears here without the page reloading is what is hot module reloading. Module तो reload हो रही है, page reload नहीं हो रहा. And चुपके से सिर्फ उतना part जो change हुआ है, that is getting replaced. Only this much part is getting replaced. That is hot module reloading. What is .rest in Next? Yeah, we need to cover that. We need to cover a few types of folders. But one common folder you will see is this. Something which has ye wale braces around. Another one you will see is this. Something that has ye wale braces and 3 dots over here. We'll come to what those are. Or try to guess. If you look at the CMS repository, which part do you think is, where are we using this? Source / app / courses / course ID. कुछ तो आया यहाँ पे. God knows what this is. That is one square bracket that is come. Then if you go to / which one of these would it be? Main. Trying to find one. Home. Nope. Courses. What is ... module ID over here? That is another thing. We'll come to what those are. But can you guess a little bit? The dynamic bits. Courses के बाद कुछ भी आ जाए, that should be handled by a page. That is what these brackets are. And उसके बाद कुछ भी आ जाए, as many routes can come. That is what ... is. But we'll get to it when we get to it. What is caching? In what sense? Generally, do you understand caching? Caching means, where did this word originate from? But long story short, if this is your Express backend, this is one way to cache. There are many types of caches. This is your database. And then, let's say there's a user that sends a request. You give me my user details. The first time you hit the database, get the data from the database. And let's say you store it in a variable here. कि हरकीरत की details ये हैं. हरकीरत details. Name हरकीरत. Something like this. आपने इसको यहाँ cache कर लिया. Why is it called cache? I don't know. But you first time request comes, hit the database, get it over here and save it over here. Next time when the request comes, you can directly get it from here. So this is what's called a cache. Okay, you are caching the data so that you don't have to hit the database again and again. This is one type of cache. Another type of cache is, something like Redis that is stored externally. This is pure in-memory cache. This is using something like Redis for in-memory cache. So, various ways you can cache data. What is serverless? What is cloud? Cloud is, जैसे बारिश होती है. So what is serverless? If you deploy something on without a server, that is serverless. I am kidding. That is not true. That is very, very wrong. Cloud was called cloud because you were deploying it on someone else's server. That is why it was called cloud. क्योंकि तुम्हें पता नहीं कहाँ चल रहा है. You don't know where your code is running. It is running somewhere else. Cloud पे रन हो रहा है. It is running on the cloud. Serverless means कि तुम्हें literally नहीं पता कहाँ चल रहा है. Cloud में, when you deploy your application on a cloud, we will eventually deploy it on AWS. You create a machine. You literally rent a machine from someone out in the world. You deploy your application on their machine. उनकी machine में जाके you run node index.js. Serverless is कि you give your code to someone and say भाई deploy कर दे अपने साथ. You give it to someone to deploy it themselves. They deploy it, they upscale it, they downscale it, they charge you per request. It is still running on a server. Serverless does not mean your code doesn't run on a server. Cloud does not mean your code can, start raining tomorrow. Serverless is just a statement कि आपने अपना server खुद नहीं provision किया. You have not provisioned your server yourself. It is running, it is being provisioned by someone else. Someone else took care of your server, is upscaling your server, downscaling your server. That is what serverless is. Cool. Why is this problem only in Next.js? That is a beautiful question. React also has hot reloading. I don't have a good answer. Oh, what am I saying? React does not have hot model. React doesn't connect to your backend. React never connects to your backend, so that's why we never saw this problem in React. And if you use NodeMon or something on Next.js, you'll probably see this issue there as well. If you start reloading or your backend code, where it doesn't really reload. Yeah, the reason this problem is only Next.js is because Express doesn't have hot reloading. When you use NodeMon, you restart the process. So you close the old database connection, start a new one. Whenever you use React, you never connect to a database, which is why we never saw it in React. And Next.js, since it has backend, as well as hot model reloading, we saw it over there. Cool. Punjab is my graduation, portfolio link. Your front end is pretty good, actually. Again, it's very hard to tell if you've written it yourself or not, but if you have, this is pretty good. By yourself, I mean, was this a clone or something? But if it wasn't, then, it's pretty good. So you might be one person happy to refer to that company. Yes, sir, I have designed myself. If you have designed it yourself also, so this is great. I can refer you to the Noida company. Do you have more projects or only 2? नाम देख के डर सा लग रहा थोड़ा. Okay, I followed you. I think you can message me. So just share them on Twitter. I followed you. I think you can message me now. Cool, this is pretty good. If you've designed them yourself, they wanted someone with an eye towards design, and it's pretty decent design. So cool. Alrighty. Great. 2 clients, one for 15K and another for 20K. Very nice. Very cool. Sorry. 1, 2, 3. Lot of good projects, a lot of projects, and if they're good, we'll see. Decent UI. v0.dev. The gradient is very common there. I've seen this in a few places. I don't know, these templates basically they all look good, but let me interview you and we can go from there. You're this guy, I've seen you this before also as well. So let's talk on Twitter and we'll go from there to ping 100x devs. Someone will filter that and we can go from there. If there's existing addition in a project, why couldn't I, which I figured out, that problem will be in production as well. It will be a silent error. So it doesn't really matter. And let me look at your hydration errors and figure out where it is. How horizontal scaling works. Can I use 5 people the same code on, let's say on the backend with 5 render servers? Yes. So the way horizontal scaling works is first you have to add a load balancer in front of your services. You can't have 5 different URLs that you rotate on the front end, even though people do that. Don't do that. You can have, what are you doing right now? You're probably deploying your application on an EC2 machine or whatever you said on render. What is horizontal scaling? You will have multiple machines because if your load increases, you need more machines. Now, if this is your client, how will your client hit your backend? Usko to pata hi nahi, isko hit karu. What if this server dies and start to hit it? So you have to put a load balancer in front, which, as the name suggests, will balance load amongst all of these nodes and will keep health checking. If this guy dies, it will stop sending the requests over here. It will send requests here, here, and here, and here. If a new one comes up, it will start sending requests over here, so on and so forth. So a load balancer is one thing you need. 2, something you need is auto scaling. You can scale to 5 servers yourself, but what if you have no load? Or what if you have too much load? So you should auto scale. So for that, ASG is simplest way to do it, auto scaling groups, or what our friend recommended a while back, serverless. One of the reasons serverless is used / recommended is if you're starting out and you can't anticipate scale, so you can delegate your auto scaling to them. Cool. ये project के लिए है, so अचानक high traffic आ गया. Okay, got it. Yeah, add the standard things, add caching, scale up your database, use Redis for most of it, make your queries extremely, cached basically. And if it's a college project, you don't also need Redis. Add a bunch of in-memory cache. We had that on the CMS initially. So, have a lot of in-memory cache, by which I mean hit the database and store the data in memory. If there is an update, then of course clear the cache. But yes, that's one thing you can do. Best workflow. What do you mean workflow for admin dashboard? What do you mean workflow? I don't know. Don't understand the question. You have to create projects. What libraries? There's just Open Zeppelin that we have explored. We don't have too many libraries in Web3. So I should, yeah, you just spend, I don't know, 2 weeks. If Web3 is going one class a week, it's very slow, so should be able to cover up. They ask, I don't know man, it's very luck based. उन्होंने क्या पूछ लिया उस पर डिपेंड कर जाता है. तो it's very hard to quantify it कि यही आएगा. But breadth of things को cover कर लो. There is a Notion doc I've shared in Super 30. After it's finished, I'll share it with everyone as well. After everyone in Super 30 gets placed, then I'll share it here. तो उसमें मतलब बहुत कुछ है दुनिया भर क्या. उन सबको पढ़ लोगे तो it's very hard कि उसके बाहर से कुछ इंटरव्यू में आ जाएगा. Is this a good point to give remote interviews? Not just in India. इसको देख के तो मुझे कुछ नहीं समझ आएगा. But show me your projects and I can tell it. Oh, you're that guy? One of them left recently, so just one left. I sent them your email. I don't know why they haven't called. So let me send them. Let me ping them again. So you're sorry only, right? Yeah. Cool. This is cool. आप पूछे थे ऐसे. Where are you seeing the hydration error? Let's see. A lot of pages. Where could it be? Explore page.tsx. I have to look at your components. Let me quickly try if I can find it. Let me just search. Let's see. Are you using date somewhere? Yep. That's a controller. Nothing on the front end. Yeah, nothing on the front end. So not that. Jaldi se aapke components. Let me just spend another 30 seconds and see if I can find it. Main. Not here. Right. Use client. Let's see. Not here. Not here. These are all UI components. Why am I looking at them? Let's look at this. This is my last try. If I can find something here. I can't find it. But I would look at the call stack and debug from there. All right. Whoever made this is also pretty clean, by the way. Cool. What is legacy and broadcast here? That depends on what version of Forge you're using, by the way. I did not have to use broadcast until I updated during the video. And legacy was again a flag that one of these I had to introduce after the update, one of them before the update. I don't know what legacy does. I googled and realized, oh, I have to use the legacy flag. Broadcast is when you updated, I've updated the version of Forge. It was creating the transaction, not actually sending it. So that dash broadcast will actually broadcast your transaction. If you don't use this, then you will see the transaction locally. It will not send it, the one to create the smart contract. Broadcast will actually send it. I did not have to use this before when I was using an old version of Forge. When I updated during the live video, then it started to tell me, okay, you need to use broadcast, so I used it. You might not need legacy anymore, by the way, in the new version of Forge that I was using. What version of Forge do I have? Forge version Forge V dash version. I have 0.2.0 now. I ran this command and I got deployed. I made changes to the code and read provided. Would that work like that? And what can be done? You can't redeploy. Ethereum contracts are immutable by nature. You can't redeploy. You'll deploy a new contract and shift your logic there. If you don't want to do that, then you'll have to do upgradability. What is upgradability? We're coming in 2 weeks. Why are Sequoia faucets limitations in airdropping? Yes. What happens is, what is Sequoia, whatever it's pronounced. It's a new blockchain. It has limited Ethereum. Doesn't have infinite Ethereum. So a lot of dumb people just, just for kicks, pull out all the Ethereum from there. So खाली हो जाता है. Airdrop Ethereum gets empty. With the hope of कि कल को इसकी कुछ value होगी. कभी होगी नहीं. But people just pull out a lot of, or drain a lot of Ethereum, or even on Solana this happens. So it's very hard to keep, they have to keep re-adding it. So that is why there are so many restrictions on who can pull out testnet Ethereum and even Solana now. The below third question is wrong, right? It might be right. It might be wrong. मैं different hoax पढ़ रहा था. This question is totally might be. I should probably remove it. The hoax mentioned here is not the hoax that Forge provides you. So I should just remove this actually. So this should almost 100% be wrong, because there are two different types of hoaxes. The one that I've explained there is a different one. By the way, DevOps ka ye first class slides are done. Just have to record it. Web3 cohort, not bridges, Ganache, and standard library. I'll remove the third assignment for now. Fox Valley. So number 2 of this. All right. For the video within hours of you finish recording. Well, that's because I started recording it on Monday, but I ended recording it on Thursday only. So I uploaded it as soon as I made it. But I started recording it on Monday, and I finished recording on Thursday, which is why I uploaded it on Thursday. Developed a dual blockchain solution, a private blockchain for a secure supplier, manufacturer, and warehouse data management, and a public blockchain for transparent product tracking. What is dual blockchain and private blockchain here in terms of creating one? You just have to create 2 blockchains. One that is anyone can come and become a miner. Anyone can look at the data over there. Even in the private blockchain, I would assume anyone can read data. But the miners are sort of controlled. Basically CBDC. What is a private blockchain? CBDC is a private blockchain. Central, whatever that currency, forget the full form. But whatever the government is creating, it's not a public blockchain. Why? Because we can't become miners. All of us can't secure the network. Only the government has 5 miners, let's say. So it's not really a blockchain. It's sort of decentralized. One miner might be with one party of the government, another might be another party, third might be some Ministry of Education, so on and so forth. So that is what a private blockchain is. A blockchain whose nodes are controlled by the people, by the internal parties only. That can be tampered. Because what if the government, sab ye mil jayenge aapas mein, they'll change the blockchain to whatever they want. A public blockchain is anyone can become a miner. So anyone can read data. Unsure what they mean here, whether or not I can read data from the private blockchain. A lot of times you have private blockchains where you can't read data as well. Good example being, if you ever have, what happens is Coinbase, for example, or, trading firms have a lot of assets, right? They have a lot of crypto. What if one of the employees here is, shady? So what they do is they have an internal blockchain that's only internally accessible. Jahan pe there are 5 stakeholders who have to sign transactions to actually transfer money from one place to another. That's a pure private blockchain that is only used for internal. People outside can't read that data. People outside can't participate in consensus. Here, people can participate in consensus. I will do this USDT lock. Oh, okay, you mean yesterday video, right? I'll do it today. I pulled those, yeah. I was scared someone else would do it. I'm still worried. Were you trying to pull it out? The problem is I should remove it, honestly. I'll by mistake randomly one day put money here and someone else will pull it out. So let me just remove. How can I remove? I'll remove it. But basically I exposed the private key of this guy and this guy had like $10. It still has some. It's not enough for you to pull it out. You'll probably pay more in gas fees. But yeah, good catch. Try this. What is it? Oh, this. Few people have asked me. This will publicly post whatever I want though, right? Or not. Or talk in private, all right? Or talk like a pirate. My bad. Oh, it is public. Sorry, it is private. It won't post this as a tweet, right? Whatever I write here. Hopefully not. Who is the best content creator in tech coding in India? नहीं करूँगा मैं ये search. Clip हो जाएगा भाई. So great. I'll try it out. Cool, that's done. What's more? Few more Notion docs. Can we write backend in Golang in NextJS folder and create separate folder? No. If you're writing Golang Java code, don't put it anywhere close to this repo. It can still be in the same repo, but in a very weird different folder. Ideally in a different repository only. Front-end only interested in relocating in Noida, only Noida. Unfortunately, that company is aggressively remote. Honestly, they're not. Like eventually they'll open up, but abhi ke liye to wo, if you even mention this, they sort of get put off. Cool. I will upload recording as soon as possible. Answer these questions. How process.env.node well, you use node npm run dev to run it locally. You use npm run build to build it on the server. npm run start to start on a server or even production. So the variable gets injected. Node.env.node_env is pre-filled by whatever bundler you're using with dev or prod based on how you're starting it, whether you're using npm run dev or npm run start. Answered that. We're okay. A lot of questions. Let me open on the Notion docs. We can go from there. Why you have a concept of decoding, not just verify? Oh, JWTs are meant to be public. They are not encryption. There's a difference. JWTs are meant to hold data that is publicly visible. Verifying is a different thing. You need whatever, yeah, JWT is a different, not protocol, what's the word? Algorithm, which is meant to be publicly readable. Anyone can decode it. Only few people can verify it. It's not encryption. If you use encryption, then you don't need, there won't be a decode thing over there. There will only be verification. But JWT as the protocol allows both decoding and verification. Anyone can decode the JWT, get back the original data, which is why there's a decode function. It's not encryption. It's different. Encryption only has the concept of encrypting and decrypting. Over there, you'll only be able to convert to one way and convert back other way. Unless you have the private key, you can't read the data. JWT may you can. It's meant to be like that. The protocol is written that way. I have a private key only, but it only had $45. Oh, you did? Motherfucker. Yeah, sorry, you can't do much with it. But you never know. I might by mistake someday put a lot of money there. So what do you do now? You need to run a bot. Since you have the private key, that's what a lot of people do. There are a lot of leaked private keys out in the world, and a lot of bots all around the world are constantly tracking them, because what if there's an airdrop? This wallet might have an airdrop. I don't have too much activity there, so it won't. But it might. If my private key got lost for a very old wallet where I've done a lot of activity, it might get airdrops from time to time. So you can run a bot that's constantly listening to transactions, and if there's ever money put in here, pull it out immediately. Oh, I haven't tried it. Does it give it to you for free? Might be nice. Good suggestion for everyone else. Cool. Look at second brain. Oh, fronted is decentish. Is there a username and password? I already saw yours. Nope. I compass but doing my class. They almost all the assignments took a lot of projects. I always do. Oh, love you, brother. You taught me how to learn things myself. Great. And using Spring Boot, is it easy to learn if you don't know Node.js? I hate it. Long story short, very opinionated, very verbose. How you write code there. I don't think Node.js helps you at all in your Spring Boot journey. Might not be true for something like Node.js and Golang. If you know Node.js, it'll be easy for you to learn Golang. But Java is a whole different ballgame. The way it's compiled, JVM, classes, patterns, Spring Boot. So I don't think it'll help you at all. But good luck. Why are you doing this? Because you're starting your internship in. Yeah, you should come. We will have meetups as well on campus, but just come otherwise. And put your Twitter here so I follow you. I am a podcast whore when it comes to these things, so I'll reach out for a pod. Cool. Oh, can you review my Solid project as well? What does it do? Startups, research startups, my startups. Lets you put your startup on chain, something like that. Feels very futuristic. Like people won't use it too much. Bro, but like there's someone who created on-chain Agario. If you've played Agario, even I forgot the name. I'll have to find it. It's somewhere in my second brain, which is my WhatsApp chat with myself. ME Foundation. I thought the Magic Eden folk created it, but they didn't. Agario. Decentralized Solana. Like you can bet some Solana and play that game, and as you grow you basically pull money from other people. I just forgot what they were called, but like Google it. So if you're trying something in that direction, cool. but Ethereum is not the best blockchain for it because it's like a lot of transactions that will happen. So you might have to use something like Sui Solana. Front-end projects, Sakura wallet, and one more thing, and Creepy wallet. And the guy, I think I've seen you in the past. Are you from Japan? It's Noida company, so I don't know if you want. Seems like a very weird transaction that some dumb people do to move from Japan back to Noida. I don't know if it's the best connect for you, but yeah, pretty decent. I've seen your Japan project before also. Decent only, like not great, not bad, sort of like that. I'll follow you though. Cool. All right. Even after spend, but I'm difficult to understand the code base. Can you post for the? Let's do a GSOC session anyways. We have to do one. It's high time. 15 December आ गई है. I'm willing to work hard with contributions, but it's not just working hard, right? That's the thing in CS. If you spent thankfully a lot of time learning, then एक दो रिपोजिटरी में आपको अभी बताता हूँ जो आपको समझ आनी चाहिए. If you've done everything from until this point, p5.js web editor तो आपको आनी ही चाहिए. I put that out as the first repo to look at because Mongoose, not even Prisma, JavaScript, not even TypeScript. Then there's Rocket Chat, that's one step ahead. That's repo, Turbo repo we haven't yet covered, chalo, but if you cover until Turbo repo, which is probably 2 weeks from now, then you should be able to open Rocket Chat. Then there are a bunch of very ad hoc badly written repositories that are also easy to look at. And then of course there's C++, Python, which probably out of scope for now. So long story short, setting up code bases locally, I think most GSOC orgs have Docker files now, which makes it very easy to set it up locally. But I have like full playlist which has some good repos that you can try. I think we have covered everything that's covered in those repositories. Should be easy enough for you to not easy enough, but go through them basically and go from there. Wise other than projects, I just completed 5th semester. I want to like GSOC. For GSOC again, advice is the same. Just go through my playlist. Honestly, it has too many things in there now. First, go through the playlist, and then let's talk again after the playlist if you're not able to contribute. Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I don't know. It's for example Keshav, right? So good. Like I don't know. Some people just have the eye for design. I don't. But some people do, and he's one of those people. So how do you build that muscle? I don't know. Like I don't know if it's a teachable skill or an acquirable skill. Learning design. So I unfortunately don't have a good answer to your question. Okay, how can you learn design better? Learn to design better. You should. The thing is, someone like Keshav can get hired like any day because a lot of front end is where there's a lot of people skills that are needed. Basically, it's very person dependent how they can change the flow of the front end. Back end is not true. The right garbage at the back end is fine, it'll still work. The front end is where people, whatever. You get the idea. मुझे भी जब मैं अपने प्रोजेक्ट बना रहा हूँ मैंने 3 बंदों से बनवाने की कोशिश करी, फिर मैं केशव को मैसेज किया भाई बना दे, एंड यू कैन टेल कि उसने बनाया. 3 बंदों ने मिल के इतना पैसा नहीं लिया जितना वो अकेला ले जाएगा बिकॉज ही इज गुड एट इट. पीपल लाइक टू पे पीपल when they're good at, people will throw money at you if you're really good, and whatever, pay you very less a little bit कि हाँ चलो भाई बन गया है. But eventually everyone would want polishes. When AI can code everything, the thing that will differentiate you will be how polished the product is. So it's a good skill. Anyone can do front end, back end. Only a few can do design. So I would leverage on it if you're into it. Cool. And I think this one ठीक है. 10:30 हो गए हैं. That's a long time. Hopefully you guys had an interesting class. I can tell you I did. Tomorrow is a holiday. We will announce on Discord as well. I will try to cover not next auth, but at the very least server actions next week.